Thank you, Senator Baldwin. Senator Tester, you're recognized for your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a great committee. We've got folks from the World Shipping Council and the American Federation of Labor. Mr. Doyle, do you deal in cars or car parts? Parts? That's a good thing because we like to redo cars on the farm, and we also like to eat popcorn. So here we go. I'm just a couple months away from starting our 45th year on our family farm. And so we've seen a lot of increases of inputs. And I hate to say every time, but I'm going to say every time we see a bump in prices, we see a bump in the cost of inputs. And this is for you, Mr. Krug. How much of the increased price in fertilizer and chemical that we talked about, and I've heard the same statistics you have, and I believe them to be true, but how much of that increased cost actually has to do with shipping? Do you know?
I don't have any exact numbers on that, but I'm sure it's a combination of input costs. Fuel is one of those, and as been mentioned earlier, it's also a market, and as soon as demand is high, there often seems to be an increase in prices. As far as the products that we produce, the popcorn, where there isn't a supply shortage, we're able to tell our customers we have the product. But it will be a big deal next year. You're correct. Sounds like we're both in farming, and it's challenging to see how we're going to afford those increase in inputs. And I don't have a good answer on why it's such a big increase, but I know that it is.
I have my own thoughts on it, and it has a lot to do with lack of competition in the industry, I believe, but time will tell that out. This is for you, Mr. Butler. The statistics I've seen is that we're losing potential of about 22% of our exports, our ag exports, because of the lack of shipping ability. I didn't get here at the very beginning, but one of you, and I think it might have been you, said we got more coming in, imports, than we got going out. It would seem to me that that would mean that exports have an advantage in this system because there's both boats and containers to take care of those exports. Can you tell me why it isn't happening? And if you want to add in why taking empty containers back when we're losing 22% of our exports is something that we should accept.
Thank you, Senator. On the 22%, my understanding is that number comes from a poll that the Agricultural Transportation Coalition did. We've never seen that poll, so I can't really speak to the legitimacy of that number. But we do know this. We know that both importers and exporters are having trouble moving their goods efficiently. So there's no question about the nature of the problem. In terms of the space in and out, and I did refer to this a little bit earlier, in normal times, pardon me, in normal times, we're about 2-to-1 imports to exports, right? So you always have to reposition some empties. During this import surge, particularly in Southern California, we've gone up 3-to-1 or more. So the big problem is really the imbalance.
Yeah.
And it's keeping everything moving so you can get it to the next person. In the case of your question, a U.S. exporter. And then once they get that container, a lot of their fight is getting it to the port so we can put it on a ship.
Yeah, and there's money in the bipartisan infrastructure package to do some things with shipping and do some things with rails that I look forward to get out the door. I do agree with Mr. Reagan that we have an opportunity here to start manufacturing more stuff in this country, and my good friend Senator Baldwin, because quite frankly, this is kind of silly. I mean, truthfully, that we're depending upon other countries for stuff we can do right here, and we might say, well, you know, it costs too much to build it here, but it's costing us a lot with the supply chain stuff, and so it's really important. So I've got a question for you, Mr. Doyle, simply because you're in the automotive business, and my son actually likes to fix up old cars. If you were king for a day, what would you do to solve this problem?
I suppose retire is not an acceptable answer.
You would retire immediately, is that what you said?
I think that we've got long-term and short-term issues. I've joked with my peers, having read through a lot of the bills and acts that are out there, that one of the things that I've seen is that you're pretty clever at naming these bills. I like the Grinch Act and things like that. In the short term, I've joked about the idea, I'd like to see the Dunkirk Act. Everybody with a boat, go out and pick up something and bring it to shore and let's get things rolling. And I know that that's in jest, but it gets at the question of urgency, and it gets at the question of creativity to solve this problem. What I have to do every day is look at my employees and talk to them about wages and unemployment issues and lower bonuses and less opportunity for training. And why is that? Well, part of it's because there is this backup in the system. And I will defer to the two gentlemen to my right as experts on why and how that's occurring. But if I were king for a day, first thing I would do would be I would create a sense of urgency by getting these things done. Okay? I don't know what the answers are. I think there's a lot of good stuff in the Freight Act that gets at this. I've seen a lot of the bills that I think a lot of really good thinking is being done. I would ask for urgency. The second thing, if I were king for today, is I think that there's an awful lot of that's also being talked about that's fundamentally addressing the needs for us to upgrade our infrastructure to support manufacturing for the long term. I think that the infrastructure bill gets at a lot of those things. There's money out there for roads and bridges, and it looks like you're electrifying everything from vehicles down to tricycles, all very cool stuff. And so I think that that's on the right path as well. King for a day, I'd get after this thing with a sense of urgency.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.